Hey guys, it's Julie Spencer, authorjuliespencer.com. I would love to hear from you. If you want to get in touch with me, you can reach me on my email at julie@spencerpublishingllc.com, or you can find me at my website at authorjuliespencer.com. Today, I'm going to focus on how to outline a romance novel. And this is taken directly from my book, How to Outline a Romance Novel. I'm going to whip through the information really quickly, but if you want to get the information in more detail, you'll have to get the book. It's awesome. So just I'm going to whip through it really quickly. So I apologize if I'm talking really fast. Just to recap what we talked about already in the first couple of videos, the differences between story structure, plot, and outlining. So remember that a story structure is a collection of guidelines around which you can build a story. A plot is a series of events, usually told in chronological order in a cause and effect sequence. And the outline is a framework on which to hang your story structures and their corresponding plots. The outline usually has a beginning, middle, and an end, just like a story. So reminder that a romance novel contains a central plot focused on the romantic relationship usually between two people, and that it follows the development of them falling in love. And then the other thing that a romance has to include is ends in a happy, uplifting way. So either a happy for now or a happily ever after. So if you can take the romance out of a story, it's not a romance. It's possibly a love story or a drama. So every story, not just romance, has to have a beginning, middle, and end. Okay. So a romance novel is no different. So breaking it down to like the absolute basic, in the beginning, they meet. In the middle, they fall in love. In the end, they live happily ever after. Okay, so that really doesn't tell you much. It's like a cookie recipe where you have the ingredients that say you need to mix everything together and bake it in the oven, and there's no details. So we want to give you some details. So at the beginning of a novel, the romance novel, you've got your setup. It's pretty much as it sounds. You're setting the lives of the characters. You're telling the reader before the drama starts, before they are irrevocably changed by this person that they fall in love with. You're basically just introducing at least one of your main characters in the setup. This is a snapshot, not a place for backstory. Conflict can be introduced here, but it's more of an attitude of the conflict that leads to the conflict. The love interest can either meet in this scene, as long as the attraction is really low, and it's just kind of a superficial attraction. Something should happen during the setup that puts the love interest on the same path. Okay, then the meet cute is where your main characters, your love interests meet for the first time on the page in the story. Okay, they might actually know each other ahead of time. So this doesn't necessarily mean it's the first time they meet. It's the first time they meet on page in the book. Okay, so this is their first interaction within the framework of the story. This is the chance to show your readers the sparks that fly between the characters, even if the sparks involve anger or frustration, or if they're literally running into each other and falling down and spilling a drink down the front of their shirt. Whether or not your character realizes that they just met the love of their life, the reader needs to know that you've just met the love of your life, or that the two characters have just met the love of their life. So this moment should be meaningful to both the reader and to the characters. So if the characters knew each other in advance, this is the moment that changes the trajectory of their lives. Okay, so then there's a reaction to the meet cute. This is a good time to introduce the opposite viewpoint if you have a dual viewpoint story, or if you have a main character takes a step back and thinks about what just happened. So during the reaction to the meet cute, the readers have a hint of the problem in the past that would keep them from forming a relationship. So be careful, this is just a hint and not a slide into backstory. There should be a hint of attraction, but remember to keep the attraction superficial or low. So the next section is the sparks fly section. In the sparks fly section, you want to show the true nature of at least one or more of the characters, something that they need to change. Show the attraction between the characters followed by an emotional reaction. So you create empathy by establishing something that they need, something, an external goal or motivation, hint at a flaw, set up a conflict. Remember to keep the attraction low or superficial at this point. The sparks fly section should kind of further hook the reader, ensuring that they continue to read the story. So next we have what I call it attraction with resistance. So during that second interaction, there can be a little bit more physical reaction within your characters. Their breathing might speed up. Their heartbeat might be irregular. They might actually notice something endearing about the other. So the second interaction should feel forced or bumpy. Then during or after the second interaction is a great time to offer the opposite viewpoint, point of view character. And give make them a little bit more sympathetic. So keep the attraction somewhat low, but have the two love interests wondering about each other, considering each other's behaviors. This is a section that can include a little bit more backstory. They should be together physically, but determined to stay apart. Okay, so in the next section of the outline, it would be something pulling them together. And in this section, you should give the reader a glimpse of how right the love interests are for each other. But at this point in the story, there should be a hint of the main character's story arc, as well as a challenge or conflict that's presented. So next, you're going to, from the setup, you're going to set up the conflict and the subplots, okay? So during this section of the story, you should show your reader at least one external goal and internal flaw. So a subplot and stakes should be established. Remember that in a romance novel, the main plot is the two characters falling in love with each other. If the main plot of your story is to save the world, and they just happen to fall in love along the way, then you don't have a romance novel, you have a romantic subplot, okay? The next section is resistance. So this is early in the story. So there should be a strong resistance to change. The characters should have second thoughts. They should have self-doubt, fear caused by internal and external conflicts. And then you can also start to introduce like mentors and sidekicks. So your characters are not alone in the story, nor should they be. Oftentimes there's like a best friend or a wise older adult offering advice and insight. This could be a mentor, friend, family member, or a bestie who helps the main character overcome fear and conflict. In a romance, the love interest has each of the love interests has his or own sidekick. So like the girl has a best friend, the guy has a best friend. So there's usually, more than two characters involved in every story. There's usually about four, and usually more than that even. So at the end of the beginning, the characters are going to be forced together. And this is something external that should force them together. They shouldn't just have a desire to spend time with one another. They should be hesitant or resistant to spend time together. So you can reintroduce the attitude from the setup that leads to the conflict. They should be stuck together, but think that they should stay away from each other. So what are the characters' reactions to the forces that are keeping them together? This is the next section. Even though they are still hesitant or resistant, there should be a hint that they're secretly excited to be together. So they should make a decision to stick it out and make the best of the situation. Show the reader that this decision reflects their desire for each other. So since the characters are now forced to be together, they are out of their comfort zone, okay? Get ready to make them squirm a little as you go into the middle part of the story, which is the fall in love. So we've got to remember that the beginning is when they meet, the middle is when they fall in love, and this is going to be a really long section, and then the end is when they have their happily ever after. So the middle section of the story is quite long and complex, and your main characters will fall in love slowly, They will be tested. They will have one step forward and two steps back. There should be push and pull cycles and experimenting within the relationship, testing out the new relationship. This middle section is often referred to as the fun and games section because the author is playing around with the characters' emotions. So chase your characters up a tree, then throw rocks at them and laugh. Then like lean a ladder against the side of the tree and encourage them to climb back down. And as they're climbing, you slide the ladder out from underneath them. Then you would make them fall flat on their face, offer them a hand up, and then pull them back down. And by the end of these terrible things happening, they will appreciate each other so much more. The relationship will be stronger from having endured these challenges along the way. They'll get there happily ever after, happy for now. Just don't give it to them too easily. So the beginning of the middle, like give them some forced interactions and outings. As the love interests interact, keep the visible tension strong, but allow their inner dialogue to show the reader what the characters are really thinking. Their physical attraction should nudge up just a little, and they should start to get to know each other. Whatever is forcing them together is the subplot that moves the romance forward, okay? During this section, your characters start to trust each other a little and recognize the good in each other. Something emotionally intimate should happen at this stage that shows tenderness and vulnerability. They should acknowledge their love interest, the interest that they have in one another, and their desire to pursue a relationship. They're drawn to each other and they desire one another. Next, we have what is called the almost kiss. This is my favorite part. So during the section with the almost kiss, something serendipitous something serendipitous happens, and then something suddenly tears them apart. The first kiss between the two main characters is usually the most important, and yet you're going to interrupt it and tear them apart halfway through their kiss. You're so mean. Okay, so perhaps the phone will ring, or someone rushes into the room, startling them, and something pulls them apart. This usually isn't one or the other of them, pulling back. They usually both want to be kissing, but something external pulls them apart. Got to be a consensual kiss, by the way. And also, if you have any type of sex in your story, it's got to be consensual. Otherwise, you're right into the erotic topics or genres, and we're talking romance here, okay? So the kisses, the sex, it has to be consensual, okay? They're succumbing to their desires, but something forces them apart, hence the almost kiss. So the whole middle of the book should be this type of one step forward, two steps back. So now that you've interrupted their big kiss, you should have some major conflict that's going to test their relationship. Perhaps you can add in an antagonist, like an ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend, and that conflict can take on the form of tension in the story. The tension is still low at this point, but life circumstances, an external event, an ex-boyfriend, something will lead to jealousy. Okay, so of course your love interest is going to be annoyed that their kiss was interrupted, that they got this new external conflict, that it's breaking them apart. They might be jealous of the ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend that's come along. I mean, how could they not be? They just almost kissed each other, right? So whatever the character does to solve the problem at this point should make the problem worse, unfortunately. Somewhere in this section of the book, they're going to begrudgingly admit to themselves that they are falling in love. So now is the time for your characters to admit to themselves, but they're still holding back. And you can add in a little bit more of their backstory that explains why the reader, or explains to the reader why the characters are hesitant. And in this section, when they physically touch each other, there should be a little bit more intimacy. There's no longer the flutter of attraction. This is getting real, okay? So just to keep things fun, add in another antagonist or challenge. So here's the opportunity to bring in another challenge, perhaps a big misunderstanding, or the opposite love interest, has a boyfriend or girlfriend show up. You've already dealt with the first antagonist. This should be different, not the same person coming back. This challenge should involve a deeper response physically and emotionally. They're invested in this relationship now and won't take kindly to someone or something pulling them apart. So, hang on a second. Okay, the next section is more togetherness, more flirtatiousness, more affection. This section include some push and pull, alternating between something pulling them back from their desire to be together and flirting and showing their affection. So they should still harbor perceptions that they cannot be together as a couple beyond what is forcing them together. This should be something, an internal tension. They try to convince themselves that they weren't meant to be together, or even they're growing emotionally closer together. So at that point, you're going to do something unexpected twist. So total plot twist, something that forces them closer. Throw something unexpected into the mix, and that they're closer emotionally, yet still makes them doubt that they'll be able to stay together long term. So even though they feel drawn to each other like magnets, they know that they must resist getting their hearts broken. They don't want their hearts broken. So then you have to have a section on negotiating the unexpected twist. So as they try to work around the unexpected twist, allow them some more flirting, some more thoughts of kissing, but keep interrupting them. Allow a little bit more conflict, but give them a chance to like each other at this point. Make sure they're still arguing within themselves, just internally at this point, that they are not going to fall in love. Then something happens that prevents them from reaching their goal. This is another big conflict with increasingly difficulty, internal and external obstacles. They're miserable. They don't know who to trust. There are cracks in the armor around the holes in their hearts, and they're holding something back, and they have serious doubts about whether they can ever make this work. And opposition comes at them full force. Then you have the big, real kiss. This is the they can't fight this feeling any longer type of moment. This is cue the 80s makeout music type of moment. Your reader has been waiting for this. So give it to them and give it to them good, okay? Whatever was making them miserable and causing them doubts is pushed aside for the passion that they can no longer deny. So this is the moment where the scene, the characters and the reader, in the moment of satisfaction, okay? And then they have another pullback. They're dreading the impending separation. They know that whatever was holding them together is soon to be over. So now they have fallen in love. They've admitted they've fallen in love. They've had their big first kiss. And then they realize that the relationship has changed them and they aren't sure what to do about it. So they feel closer to each other than they had ever thought possible, which makes the inevitable separation that much more difficult. They can never go back to the way they were before. Then they have the internal admission that they've fallen in love. The emotional and physical pull and attraction can lead to another kiss. During or after that kiss, let one of the other characters regret any actions they took that pulled them apart, especially with so little time remaining. Through their inner dialogue, allow the reader to see them fully admit to themselves that they've fallen in love. Let them try to instigate more physical affection, even though the other character pulls away, because they know that the more affection will lead to more pain when they are eventually part ways. So at this point, they're going to hope for a future together. So have the character who is ready for a romantic relationship get the other character to admit that they're in love. Now both characters have said it out loud. Possibility for a future together seems better than ever. Then you're going to dash their hopes. Of course, we knew it couldn't last because the story isn't over yet. So whatever big, powerful thing brought them to that moment of satisfaction gets ripped out from under them. And it's usually by something one of them says or does rather than an external force. So if one of them bares his soul, the other one says something stupid or insensitive, and they mistake unintentionally. Misunderstanding can lead to a breakup or a pullback. Alternatively, or in addition to the above suggestion, external circumstances could push them. Okay, so I'm saying this wrong. There's the internal conflict, and then now an external conflict can also be introduced and they could need to find a way to come back together. Then you're going to have a secondary plot resolution. So whatever conflict dashed their hopes should simmer down. They decide that they won't let the issue create a permanent chasm between them. This shows their growth as a couple, but it also shows individual growth among the characters. So the conflict or antagonist that was threatening their relationship reappears, it's defeated, turning the tides, resolving all conflict once and for all. This should happen in a very heroic way. One of the love interests should step up and be proactive, and the other and make it clear that they will not let anything get between them again. Then their time together is almost over. So parting is such sweet sorrows. Baloney. There's nothing sweet about being apart, being forced apart. But they both know that their relationship was doomed from the start, and they were never meant to fall in love in the first place. They were pushed together, and that's the only reason they fell in love. However badly they didn't want to be together at the beginning is how badly they want to be together now, how they can't stand the thought of being apart. So something outside of their control will separate them at this point, and they can do nothing about it. The problem is they can never go back to the way they were before because they now know how incredible love is, and they want it back bad. But coming together again will take major effort, and they don't think that there's any way that can even make it happen. So no matter how badly they want to be together, they know that their time is over. Okay, so now at the ending of the story, remember that we have the beginning when they meet, the middle when they fall in love, and the end is when they get their happily ever after. You're going to give them a happily ever after, but you're not going to make it too easy on them. Okay, so they're going to have a big declaration of love, and they're going to acknowledge that there are still obstacles in their way, and they're going to determine that they're going to make it through all obstacles. So one of them puts their foot down and says there has to be a way. So they are willing to make sacrifices, major changes in their life in order to be together. Both of them experience a false hope. Both of them have, they want a chance to save the love. They're determined to make their relationship work because love conquers all. But in the real world, love does not conquer all. Whatever outside force would inevitably push them apart is still in their way despite their profession of love. Their determination to make things work might have sounded good at the time, but life is not a fairy tale. Your job as the author is to push them apart one last time. There's a feeling of deep loss and regret as they watch the other walk away. And then you have what's called the dark night of the soul, the black moment. This is another big conflict with increasingly difficult internal and external obstacles. They're miserable. They don't want to be apart. They don't know who to trust. They're just challenges all around them. They're holding back. They're not telling themselves the whole truth. This moment of agony could last an hour or months or years, but it's a time of depression, misery, and the feeling that life can't possibly go on without the other. They can't go back to the way they were before falling in love. My kitten wants to get involved in the conversation. So they can't go back to before they were falling in love, and life is over without them. So then they get advice from a mentor or friend. Thankfully, someone comes in to save the day. Not really to save the day, but to give them some sort of hint on how they can save the day, either a best friend or a brother or sister, or some sort of mentor or something, can basically tell them to quit wallowing in misery, to smack them upside the head, and tell them to get their act together, go upstairs, take a shower, and find a way to win this person back. They are your soulmates. So whatever they're going to do, do it now. So then the main character finds a solution. So this is your character's aha moment. They've figured it out. They know what they need to do in order to win their love interest back. This is the moment where they jump off the couch, where they've been wallowing in potato chips for weeks and binge watching old chick flicks. They hurry up the stairs and shower and say, order the white horses. I know what I need to do. Of course, you're not going to make it that easy on them, but you're not going to make it that hard on them either. This is the moment where it's all coming together. They've got it all figured out, or so they think. So this is the moment where one of them stands before a crowd of people and declares, I can't live without you, and I'll do whatever it takes to be with you. This is the moment where the other one runs forward and throws him or herself into their arms and says, I love you too. And they kiss and hug, and the crowd swoons. And often this takes place in front of their peers or their family or their coworkers, and involves being vulnerable and tearing down the walls around their hearts and throwing the pieces on the floor and never to be built again. Okay, so this is the declaration of happily ever after. If your characters are adults, this is their commitment to get married, have babies, drive off into the sunset together, vowing to be happy forever. If your characters are teens, this is the moment where they're standing on the gym floor at prom, music, and pulling their bodies together and knowing that all will be well in the world because on Monday morning, they'll be holding each other's hand. Okay, so then the last section of your book is going to be the epilogue. Not all books need an epilogue, but readers love them. Readers want to see everything come together. My kitty, she wants to play. I'm going to have to get out the stick and feather and play with her. But let's finish up the epilogue real quick first. So this should happen a little bit into the future. It should give the reader a little bit of time that has passed for the reader to know that they have stayed together, that the couple has stayed together. So many times the epilogue happens like on the wedding day, or when they finally walk down the aisle, or 6 months after planning the perfect wedding, and it pulls their lives together. Often this happens like 6 months after, not 6 months, a year. That'll be a good trick. A year after the wedding, when they, announce that we're going to have a baby. This is so exciting. So if they're teens, if your characters are teens, this could be like the first day of college, where they're moving into the dorms, separate dorms, because, we write clean. If you write spicier, they could be moving in together. Whatever. This should be a little bit in the future, and oftentimes they're moving into like a college dorm if your kids are young. Or they could be like a couple of years later after falling in love, and one gets down on one knee and presents a ring, and they decide to get married. So you get the idea. You're going to tie up the loose ends. And make sure that the reader like sighs and swoons, and it's ending the book with a satisfied sigh. Okay, remember that in a romance they have to end in either a happy for now or a happily ever after. So that is the end of that. I know I ripped through it really fast. Again, if you want more details on it, you can get my book that is How to Outline a Romance Novel. You want to get in touch with me, you can email me at julie@spencerpublishingllc.com, or you can find me at authorjuliespencer.com. So I'll see you in the next video, and I hope that you guys have a great day. Thanks for watching.